When I go and sit out in nature, it brings me back to myself and it makes me feel like myself again. I get to look at the beauty in the water and the trees and the grass and the clouds and soak up the healing energy of the sun, the sun always makes me feel better. Even just stepping outside, I feel better as a being. And when I when I sit outside, it reminds me what life is really about. Just looking at simple things like the ants crawling in the grass or the leaves blowing in the wind. It reminds me that life is simple and we're here to enjoy this simple life and make fun out of this simple life and just to love wholeheartedly, unconditionally. I love to go out and take deep breaths in and out, deep breaths in through my nose and out through my mouth, and just breathe in the fresh air. Taking deep breaths or doing breath work is good for our brains in general, but especially going out in nature and taking deep breaths and doing breath work out in nature, because it's a different quality of air. You get the real deal quality of air when you go and sit out in nature and take deep breaths or do breath work. So that's what I was doing on this in particular day. I spent a while out here this day, just enjoying what life really is, getting away from the hustle and bustle, and just connecting with life, connecting with the source, the most ultimate higher power. Fun fact, about 60% or more of our body is made of water. So that's where I'm getting it when I say water is God. If the sun did not rise and go back down every day, if we didn't have that source of light that came up and came back and down and went back down every day, we literally would not survive. We would not survive on this earth, on this planet Earth, without the sun. And that's what I mean when I say the sun is God. If we did not have the grass, the trees give off oxygen and many other helpful chemicals that are good for us, that are floating around all in the air that we cannot see. If we didn't have the trees, the grass, the plants that gave off those valuable chemicals that we need to breathe in to survive, and oxygen is just one of the many, we would not be able to live on this planet without those things, without the trees doing that job, without the plants, the grass doing that job. So that's what I mean when I say the universe, the land is God. I had a really good day this day. Before coming out, I wasn't feeling my best. But when I left, I most certainly felt better than I had in a long time. I felt like myself again. And every time I come out and sit out in nature like this, I don't even be wanting to leave. But I be having to move on with my day. And I'm just grateful to have these things just right here. This shit that you don't have to pay for. You don't have to pay to go sit out and look at the water and go touch the trees and go sit and put your feet in the grass. You don't have to pay to do that. So that's what I mean when I say, like, This is what remind. I'm showing y'all my shirt, yeah. But this is what when I. What's up, YouTube? It's Natea Sanique, and I'm back with another YouTube video, and it's Change the World or Die Trying. Okay, today we will be doing a handy dandy classical book review. I'm super excited to do this in particular book review because this is hands down an amazing book. And the point of this video is go shop the book. Today we will be doing a book review, The Destruction of Black Civilization, Great Issues of a Race from 500 BC to 200 AD by Chancellor Williams. My dad, he let me borrow this book. I'm not going to use the word gave me the book, but he let me borrow the book. But you can also get this book on Amazon. You can listen to it on YouTube. Or yes, you can go shop the audio on Amazon, I think. Well, they will read it to you. You can listen to the audio for free on YouTube where they will read it to you. Or you can simply go shop the book on Amazon. I'm gonna leave the link in the description box. So let's get straight into the video because it's gonna be a good one. I felt completely empowered when I read the book. When I read the book, it made me, for the first time ever in my life, I was proud to be Black. For the first time ever in my life, I felt good to say that I am a nigga in the United States of America. I felt completely the book made me feel just great about being Black, and it made me look at other Black people differently. It made me look at us as gods of this land. I learned the first and most valuable thing that this book taught me is that Black people had the first ever, and at one point only, and thriving civilization in the world. It was in Egypt, called Ethiopia, or they also called it the land of the Blacks. It was all Black people, whether the Black people were my color, lighter than me, darker than me, Black, so Black that they were blue or purple. There were only Black people. These Black people had an amazing civilization. And when I say civilization, I mean where like a system, where things ran in a certain way. It ran properly, and it was a system that worked for everyone. They had beautiful lands. They had gold. They had, many people know of the big temples and that are in Egypt. That is originally Black people's land. The true Egyptians, when back in the day when you said an Egyptian, you knew that they were talking about a Black person. If you are Black, your ancestors are the ones that did that in Egypt. All of the beauty in Egypt, your ancestors did that for us. So yes, that is the first very valuable thing that I learned reading this book. And if you want to read more about that, if you want to feel good about being Black and where you root from and where you stem from, go shop the book, because we don't get that lesson. They don't tell us that in school. They don't tell us that Black people were the first people to ever do it. They don't tell us that we had amazing lands and across all of Egypt. They don't tell us that. And when you go to school and you learn about Black history, you learn that you were captured and put on a boat and you were enslaved. And you learn about Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks, but it's so much more than that. You didn't have to be kin to a Rosa Parks or a Martin Luther King. Our ancestors, your great grandfathers, grandmothers, great aunts, uncles, They did this for us. They are the reason why we're still alive today. Was that the first to enslave black people were not Europeans, Caucasians, and when I use the word Europeans, Caucasians, white people. It was not the white people to enslave black people first. It was the Arabians. I'll call them Arabians. So the people of Egypt, whenever you say the word Egyptians, the people that come to your mind now, like of what we were taught in school, the people that come to your mind and what they look like, those were the first people to enslave black peoples. And they identify as Arabs or Arabics. The Arabs or Arabics, they are originally black. Their ancestors are black. They started mixing. Originally, that's the point of black people. I mean, that's the point of mixed people, is to erase the fact that black people were the first people on earth. That is the point of mixing. That is the point of being a mulatto or whatever you may be mixed with. That is the root of it. Were originally Arabics. They started to mix with the Ethiopians. So after they had their mixed breeds, they no longer wanted to be identified as an Egyptian, which once again, an Egyptian is a black person. So back in the day when you said Egyptian, once again, they knew that you were talking about a black person, someone that was of color. So they started mixing the original Egyptians and the Arabians, which now they identify as Arabs. They wanted to be separated from, I don't know if that makes sense. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but I hope it makes sense and that I'm saying it right. But if not, go shop the books. Go shop the book. Yes, the first people to ever enslave black people, before black people, because black people enslaved their own people, but it was nothing like when black people enslaved their own people. It was black people from a different tribe. They did not want to be there, but they were not, the people that were enslaved, they had their own worlds, they had their own homes, they had their own stores, they had their own schools, they walked around freely, they weren't shackled or chained, they were just separated from the rest of the society. That's what, whenever blacks enslaved blacks, that's what it was like. Not saying that it was right, but please understand that it was nothing like the way that Europeans enslaved black. The religion Islam or the Muslims. That's why you'll come across a lot of black people that they are mixed into or they believe in the religion Islam. Because okay, so Islam it's an earlier version of Christianity. Christianity comes from Europeans, white people, and that was their supreme God, was the Jesus Christ. Arabs did it first, and they did it with the religion called Islam. That is how the Arabs conquered and enslaved the black people. They presented them with a religion. They presented them with, oh, if you just read this and just praise this one person, all of your problems will disappear and you won't have any of these problems, because this one supreme God is going to make all of that go away and you won't have to deal with that. And if you want to read more about that, go shop the book. The link will be in the description box. Okay, so the third valuable thing and very interesting thing that I learned while reading this book was how the Europeans did it. Mind you, as I just said, the Arabs did it first. So the first way that the Europeans conquered and enslaved and took over the land of the blacks is they copied what the Arabs did. Secondly, the Europeans, they came and settled in Egypt, the bottom of Egypt, the top of Egypt, places like the Sahara Desert, the Sudan, were the parts that belonged to the blacks. The land of the blacks was the top part, and it was very fruitful. It had many areas of running water. It wasn't dry and droughted and deserts. There were periods of time where they did have sandstorms, and it wiped many of the lands out. But the Europeans, they would come into the areas at the bottom of Egypt, and they would just say, oh, we're just peaceful settlers. We need to trade. We need medicine. We need spices. We need this. We need that. We're simply just here to trade because we need help. So first they were coming into the land just to get goods and go back. And then they started to settle in the land as just peaceful settlers. That's how they portrayed themselves to the blacks. But from the very moment that the Europeans seen what the blacks had and how they had it, they knew, I want that. And I'm going to get that. And the way that I'm going to get it is because I'm going to take it. So the Europeans put on a mask. Black people, they were peaceful people. They lived in nature. They didn't know anything about being conniving and scandalous and devious and trifling and slimy. All of those words that I just stated are exactly what the Europeans were. And the Europeans portrayed this image to them. Black people were like, okay, like, that's fine, settle. Just as long as that's all you're gonna do, just settle. So that is the Europeans. They settled, they traded, and they became close with the blacks. They, from the time that they were there, they studied the blacks. Not only they studied the blacks, they plotted upon the blacks. They looked and they seen their weak points. And the most major weak point that the Europeans noticed about the blacks were that they were heavy on tribalism. An example of tribalism would be, so if you know, you know. So it would be an example of like Texarkana, Ashdown, Nashville, Hope, Foreman, PG, LE, Pleasant Grove. If you are in Foreman, but you're not from Foreman, you're from Nashville, they're gonna capture you and take you into slavery. We don't fuck with you. There's no reason for you to be over here. There's a problem with you being over here. That's what the Europeans noticed about the blacks, that they were very heavy upon tribalism. So they did the old handy dandy, divide and conquer. So there were many of the tribes that they asked the Europeans, knocked on the door, and they asked for 100 of their slaves. And they asked for this trade they wanted to trade things like Bibles and crosses and the fiat money that they had. And when I say fiat, I mean the money had no true value. The money that the Europeans possessed or came with, it had no true value. It was money that they called money. It was money that was money to them. And it meant, but really, for real, in actuality, the money that they presented the blacks with had absolutely no value. They presented them with religion. Just like I said previously, if you give us your slaves and you just read this book, all of your problems will disappear. And some of the tribes did accept that. They did give away 100 of their slaves. It was a very hard fight. It went on for centuries. I read in the book it went on for centuries, that they went back and forth trying to capture the land of the blacks. They did not just come in and bust their shit down and take everybody all at one time and everybody getting on ships just one time. No, this went on for centuries. They went back and forth for centuries. They started mixing. Once they started mixing, that means the women were having their babies. When the woman had the baby, they were completely taking that baby. The woman never seen the baby again. They were raising that child up. In the Arabic culture, and then that baby would come up and be on the throne over thousands of blacks. So it was also when I'm telling too much information, I'm talking too much. If you want to read about it, go shop the book, because it's some really good information. Hey, I touched on this just now, but the fourth very valuable thing that I learned from this book was that black people do not get along. And this isn't, even in today's world, niggas killing niggas, the bitches fucking the bitches, and the bitches don't like the bitches. Like, we go through that in today's generation, but that it started so much. It goes way, 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 way back. Black people are heavy upon tribalism. Another example of tribalism is like, okay, we could be cousins, but just because you're my cousin, that doesn't mean we have the same last name. So with that being said, if you don't have the same last name as me, black people, like back in the day when I say heavy on tribalism, they be on some, like, if you don't have the same last name as me, they be on some fuck you. We don't fuck with you. Don't come over here. Don't come around us. We don't fuck with you. Like, they was heavy on that. And everybody know, like, just because you don't have the same last name, we still kin. Now, them motherfucking Europeans, they cannot like each other, not fuck with each other, not get along. But when it come to getting them motherfucking black people, them motherfucking white people, they gonna come together and they gonna get done what needs to be done on account of a common enemy, which is black people. You know what I'm saying? It's like black people can't do that. Black people, they act like they can't come together and on account of a common enemy, and that's just not now in today's society. It's been like that. Okay, now I'm gonna scroll through the book just one good time, and I'm gonna stop wherever I stop it, and I'm gonna just read. Let y'all get a feel for the feel what I mean. All right, this is where I stopped at, page 39. And I'm going to start at the top of the page. It says, the new approach. The first period will begin with prehistory, primarily because Noe, one of the oldest cities on earth, was begun by blacks before recorded history. Another important reason is that the Canadians and Asians had invaded the Nile Delta and established a strong hold in Lower Egypt. In prehistoric times, this early concentration of whites along the seacoast of the land of the blacks is a circumstance of critical importance in black history, because it was exactly from this development that the achievements of the blacks were overshadowed by later writers or blotted out entirely. The call is for black specialists is one period in one area. What, for example, was the actual influence of the white Asians rigidly held black for centuries in the lower 1/4 of the country? Upon the blacks who held the 3/4 that came to be known as Upper Egypt, review and in-depth studies of this period are required. The general historian is out. The best general histories, region by region, can be written only after the work of the specialist is done. The second period might as well be from the conquest of Lower Egypt by the Ethiopian leader Menes in 3100 BC to the end of Sixth Dynasty 2181, also the end of the Old Kingdom. This was the period that gave birth to Egypt, and before which there was no Egypt. It was the period during which black kings united the two lands, started the dynastic lineage system, and began the building of the greatest civilization. The greatest in-depth review and concentration of research should be focused on this second period. It was in fact the golden age in the history of the blacks, the age in which they reached the pinnacle of a glory so dazzling in achievements that Western and Arab writers felt compelled to erase it by sheer power of their position, beginning black history over 3,000 years later, and limiting it, such as allowed to Africa south of the Sahara. The third period of black history in Egypt should begin with the seventh dynasty in 2181 BC and subdivided into the tragic periods of internal turmoil and white invasion. When it says like internal turmoil, that's when I was talking about when they would get like someone that was mixed on the throne, or maybe he could have been black, but he was simply just, he was weak. He was weak as fuck. Like, keep it G. Just because somebody black, that don't mean they like you. You know what I'm saying? Some motherfuckers really just be, they be, you know, foul in the head. So that's another time whenever the Europeans would attack, is whenever they had a weak leader on the throne. The first subdivision would be from 2181 BC to 2040 BC, covering the 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th dynasty. Therefore, strict chronologically should be ignored in order to focus on a single issue. The role of evasions and conquests in the destruction of black civilization, with the resulting ethnic transformation of Egypt from black to brown, Afro-Asian, and Afro-European to white. Okay, so this section from the book that I'm going to read is very much handpicked, and I just felt like it was very valuable and something that I knew that I wanted to put in this book review. Okay, so the heading of this book that the section of this book that I'm going to read, it is on page 56. And the heading reads, The Conquest of Blacks by Religion. I'm going to start on the second page up under that heading. It says, but what happened in the process of converting the blacks to Islam and Christianity was the supreme triumph of the white world over the black. Millions of Africans became non-Africans. Africans who were neither Muslim nor Christians were classed as pagans and therefore required to disavow their whole culture and to regard practicality, all African instructions as backward or savage. The blacks in their own right became non-persons, members of a race of nobodies, so hopeless that self-realization as personalities, even in a subordinate status, could only be achieved by becoming Muslim or Christian. Indeed, in order to destroy completely not only their African heritage, but also their very African identity, psychologically, they were forced to change their names to Arabic and Christian names. Henceforth, if these black Emilys, Johns, Hamads, Samuels, and Abdullahs happen to achieve greatness in some field, the assumption would be that it was Caucasian achievement. Unless a special effort was made to identify the race of the person in question. Blacks at home in Africa and blacks scattered over the world bore the names of their enslavers and oppressors. The ultimate in self-effacement that promoted a self-hatred which made pride in the race difficult. That these psychological shackles still handicap not only the rebirth of modern African states, but also blacks everywhere, should be obvious to all. Finally, there were the invaders who apparently disdained the cloak of deception and came in fighting. They had no problems. They knew in advance that they would find the Africans almost everywhere, unprepared to defend themselves against all organized, well-trained body of men, no matter how small. This situation developed as splinter. Independent little states became more and more numerous. The use of secret agents seems to be as old as organized states. For the practice of sending spies is goodwill ambassadors, traders, etc., well in advance into a country to be invaded, goes far back into antiquity. Those sent into Africa from various lands could report back. And if you want to read the rest of that, go shop the book. The link will be left in the description box. I also will leave the link where you can listen to it on YouTube for free. It'll be in like sections. I think they probably have about like 10 different parts. If you get on YouTube and type this title in, it'll be like part 1, part 2, part 3, like that. And you can listen to it. They will read it to you. You don't even have to sit down and read it yourself. They'll read it to you. This is very valuable. If you are interested in learning about your true history and what Black history really is and how Black people got to where we are and how we are in today's world and society, please go shop the book. Shout out to my dad for letting me borrow this book. I really appreciate it. This really opened my eyes up to a lot of things, and gratitude. I'll catch y'all in my next video. Do not forget to like, comment, subscribe, share, send it in a message, Instagram, whatever. Share this information. We have to get Black people, we have to be informed. We have to be enlightened. We have to know. And it's like, I feel like that's the problem. Black people just don't know. Like, most Black people in the world don't even know that these white people don't fuck with us. Not even do white people not fuck with us. I don't give a fuck if they Mexican, they Asian, Cambodian, Japanese. Bitch, if they ain't Black, they don't fuck with us. And then it make it worse because Black people don't even fuck with Black people. It's all of the other different races versus Blacks. That's what racism is. So please go shop the book. Once again, share this, like, comment, and subscribe. If you watched all the way to the end, I appreciate you. Thank you for showing love. And you must not forget, it's change the world or die trying.